Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and he is fresh back from the Madison Square Garden after witnessing a very intense game two.
Yeah, I know this show is Just Giants and we need to be focused on the draft, which is coming up, but I am a mental wreck. These playoffs, the Knicks, my Lightning, even this past weekend of you know Rays Yankees it's leaving me in a state of just utter exhaustion. If you're listening to this, on Tuesday morning, I'm sure by now you saw how the Knicks came back down 6 with 35 seconds left on a crazy three, an improbable steal after missing another three, DiVincenzo another three, and a great defensive stop at the end to somehow snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I started to say defeat from the jaws of victory because that's always what happens to the Knicks. These things never happen to us. So, I've been going to Knick games now for 40 years. I've had season tickets for 20, and that might have been the craziest I've ever heard the Garden. And it has been some, special moments. I mean, this team's blown for the last 20 years, but that was something. And God help this city if this team ever wins a championship, even in my lifetime. So I know we're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about running backs and linebackers today, but forgive me if I am just trying to catch my breath and my voice. So if you all watch it along with me, you know how I feel and you know how exciting this is. So let's do this.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could be talking about the Giants in this same hopeful, ecstatic. I can't remember the last time MetLife sounded like that kind of way.
I think it would be virtually impossible in that shithole of a stadium to sound like that, but that's on our owners to build that.
Boy,
dump.
that's pretty impressive. Consider what does it Madison Square Garden hold? 30,000 people.
For basketball, 19-2.
Yeah, exactly. And MetLife is what 88,000, 86,000.
Yeah, in all its concrete glory and no dome glory.
Yeah, and the crowd only gets loud when we're on offense.
I think the crowd only gets loud when the opposing team, their fans get loud.
Oof. Well,
we got to work on that, guys.
Yeah. So, getting into the draft, how this team gets better. We're going to kind of round this out with the last two position groups. I normally wouldn't group them together, but I think that we ran out of time. No, I mean,
show prep on this show is unmatched.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it,
true.
But we ran out of time is true, but also there's, I think, decent reason why there might be like a larger conversation, but not much to do at some of these positions. So in getting into, we'll start with linebackers. We'll stay on the defense. Giants under contract. They made the big move last year, getting Bobby Okereke. He is still signed through 2026. He is a dead out after 2024 in case, after this season, in case things don't go well. And we might see a dip in Bobby Okereke's play, switching out of Wink Martindale's system into this new system with Shane Bowen. But everything indicates to me that they found a player on the upswing. They made the big money move before he commanded the big money move. Mm-hmm. Based on the way he played last year in that defense, it was head and shoulders better than what I expected. I don't know. I have Bobby Okereke as a build-around player still for this defense. I think that his build-aroundness is something that is still inflating. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. It may be in retrospect that we look back and say that the build-around years for Bobby Okereke were 2023 through, 2026 or whatever. Go ahead. I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I have him as a builder on also, and I think it's because of the intangibles he brings. I mean, in a defense that was either too young or had some immature people, I think he gave a presence of leadership and maturity. And I think, those are things that, they're not on the stat sheet. They're not, but you kind of know it when you see it. And I felt like he was a leadership presence. He's the guy with the dot. He's the guy, I feel very, I feel like he's kind of a definition of a build around. Not that he's a franchise player, but a build around. Like we want to have more guys like him in your defense.
Hmm.
So I have him as build around as well.
Was any of that a shot at Xavier McKinney?
Who?
Okay. Um, yeah, and I think the most important part with Bobby Okereke, well, I guess not the most important, but the nicest surprise about Bobby Okereke is how much more effective he was able to make Micah McFadden playing next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Micah McFadden is signed through 2025. Um, Playing next to Bobby Okereke in Wink Martindale's kind of confusing defense that allowed blitzers to maybe get some free rushes just based on pre-snap looks, post-snap changes, and things like that. But Micah McFadden lived in the backfield last year. He
Mm-hmm.
was like the kind of player that if we were playing against the Giants and we didn't play the Giants very often, say we're a fan of the Raiders or something like that, like, God, who's this guy? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the third tackle for loss. We're like, we can't run for shit in this game, and it's
Mm-hmm.
all this guy's fault. And
And
really,
I don't really know who he is. It's not like, oh, I'm
yeah.
looking. Yeah.
And so when I look at him, it's hard for me to separate how much of that is the defense, how much of that is playing next to Okereke, and some of it is we've seen glimpses from McFadden already. So, but I think that as a Robin to Bobby Okereke's Batman, this is a
Mm-hmm.
good for now piece that can be, I wouldn't say easily replicated, but not expensively replicated.
Yeah, I agree. Exact same thing. I think, maybe looking down the road, you may want to try to improve, but not right now. We have bigger needs and bigger fish to fry, and I'm perfectly fine with him, especially, you know, alongside him and just what you said. So yeah, I have it also pegged as a good for now, but a good for now with potential for growth.
Right, right. So here's the thing, right? Like he's signed through this upcoming season. He's signed through the next season after that. He's only going to be 25 at that point when it's time to think about is Micah McFadden here for a second contract. And it's possible that he grows so much or playing next to Okereke inflates his stat sheet so much that his market worth is not what his real worth is, and he leaves. It's also possible that he just continues to grow and he's worth a second contract. And the good for now becomes sort of a weird build around tandem with him and
Hmm.
Bobby Okereke. You know what I mean? So, like you said, with room for growth, I think, just being 25 years old at the end of the contract, absolutely, yeah, room for
And
growth.
also, right now, he's not a guy where fans or other of the Giants or other teams are like, God, this guy's going to be a free agent in 2 years. I can't wait. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
it's going to be one of those things where I don't see, this isn't Juan Soto, the Yankees about to be a free agent, and everybody in his world wants him. He's going to get $500 million. This is a guy that, even if we see incremental increases, he's not going to break the bank.
Right. Yes. You wouldn't think.
Hmm.
Who knows with the way markets work with their supply and demand? But yeah, I don't think so.
Hmm.
And that leaves two guys that I'm going to kind of lump together because they're in sort of the same boat, and that's Carter Coughlin and Darian Beavers. Both of these guys are in their contract years. Now, here's where they're kind of different. Carter Coughlin is a special teams. I don't want to say ace, but um, do it all kind of guy. I think he plays on 4 teams, special teams. And also, whenever it's the preseason and he plays at linebacker, he's like the one special teams guy that knows how to play his actual position. Like, he can rush the quarter. He actually looks pretty good rushing the quarterback. He looks okay in coverage. Like, he's a functioning linebacker. And for that reason, he's earned himself another contract. He's managed to stay on the roster year after year. It's because he is a good special teams player and actually plays linebacker. That is a perfect good for now. Like, for what he is, it's absolutely what you. Everything has always been good, perfect for him. He's an
Hmm.
undrafted free agent, I'm pretty sure, or a 7th round pick, one or the other. Super late round, a linebacker. You're not going to expect him to be on the field, but you hope that they develop the way that Carter Coughlin did into this special teams guy that you don't want to say you can't live without, but it's like, oh man, I forgot Carter Coughlin's contract ends. We should definitely keep him. Yeah, that's somebody that we can't really. I don't really want to have to think about the special teams loss. You know, it
Right.
sounds silly, but it's one of those integral pieces that you're like, fuck, I didn't cut that out of the budget. Well, make it work because it's only like $1 million or something like that.
Mhm,
Darian
mhm.
Beavers, on the other hand, is the guy who came in here with some kind of hype coming out of Cincinnati, a very, very good Cincinnati team with a very good Cincinnati defense. Got hurt and hasn't done shit since.
Mhm.
And even in this contract year, it feels like he's just a move on guy.
I agree. I just the injuries and stuff, and it's just again, you're looking at the back end. I think you can get younger and healthier and probably cheaper, even with a later draft pick or a cut down guy. So I'm a move on from him.
Yeah. And that's, when you look at the linebacker group now, the off ball linebacker group, do you feel like a huge need to fill that up with significant resources? What's your take on this position group?
I think if we were a little further along down the path of you know becoming a title contender, sure. Right now, no. I think this unit as a whole is a good for now. Like bigger fish to fry, like we've been saying all along with other units and things. I think we can live with this for now.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I mean, I'm not really sure how the Giants viewed this. I'm not sure how Shane Bowen views this situation either.
Mhm,
But just in general, like you have two solid starters at a position where a lot of times there's only one of them on the field.
mhm.
So it kind of feels like you have your depth already. But I can understand um, feeling like you need to add something just in case of an injury. But like my instinct is that I would rather load up on cheap defensive backs to fill whatever. And if you have to play a run heavy team and people are injured and you don't have the two linebackers to do it, and you're going to have to do with a bunch of nickel package situation,
Mhm.
then that's just a situation you're in those rare circumstances in this shitty year that you're transitioning, right? That's just
Right.
kind of how I look at it.
Yep. I
Um, and I just don't think. I guess there's a possibility that there's like a veteran minimum contract that you can shell out. Like like Jared Davis was kicking around with this organization like a year ago.
Mhm.
I could picture a Jared Davis level signing.
Mhm.
Um,
Just someone purely a depth guy in case somebody goes down or just
he,
the
he
potential
he's
it.
been around in the league over 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, he's not commanding. He may not even be getting phone calls. I don't. I use Jared Davis as an example because he's a perfect kind of guy, but I don't even know what Jared Davis may be waiting for a phone call.
He might be
Um,
waiting a long time too.
yeah, but I mean, just somebody like that, somebody that just pops in there. Like I think. Do you remember we had Keith Rivers here at one point?
Oh, the old guy from USC?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
For
Like
a
just
cup of coffee? Yeah.
Yep, just a signing like that.
Mhm.
Um, I could see that. What I can't see is dipping into the draft and hitting one of these guys that I think are kind of day two guys, like Cedric Gray from UNC. I certainly don't think the higher like Junior Colson from Michigan, who's higher rated, I think in a lot of people's eyes. I just don't see it happening. Maybe you might be able to talk me out of it. Maybe that's just me thinking like my steadfast like I just don't care about the defense this year. You know what I mean? Like if you're not willing to go out there and get a guy that's like perfect for this defensive coordinator's system, like the way we went after Deontay Banks, right? That made
Right.
sense. I can get behind that. They needed a corner, and they got a guy not specific to the system, but tailored to it. I think they did that already with Brian Burns, and they're just done. Like anything now is just patchwork, and don't waste a draft picking on patchwork, right?
Right. To me, drafting is for the future. Free agents and trades are for the now. And if you're just even these guys we said were good for nows or even replacing, it's not like they're desperate needs for needs replacing now. It's just we want to move on. And I wouldn't. I'm not investing the future on something for just right now, I want to use draft picks on guys that are going to be guys that I want to have as, build arounds or
Right.
very solid good for nows. Like guys written in pen is good for now. If we're going to go like a day three pick, this is something just to kind of go replacement level over what we have now. What's the point?
I,
With the caveat again, with other things we have to do with this team, all the other holes to fill, the depth we have to fill with this team.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I didn't say this actually, but the draft is sort of it's sort of like a gumball machine. You get what comes to you. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So, who am I to say don't fix the defense, worry about the offense if Cedric Gray is sitting there in
I,
the 6th round or something? You know what I mean?
well,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's more like I'm not going to get pissed off if the gumball I get is black when I wanted red. I'm
Yeah.
still going to chew the gum,
Yeah.
and something. I right now I am thirsting for a piece of gum to chew on for a while, and I need whatever you'll give me. I'm not beggars can't be choosers. I don't get a cherry gumball. I'm taking my gumball and going home. And I think
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a lesson I think all Giant fans are, because again I think we've been, over the last, and this is all football fans and all sports fans and everybody. It's like you get so locked into who you want and who you like and what your draft board says that
Right.
it becomes like politics, us versus them, and you start to actually like vilify what you didn't want. If if you're the biggest Daniel Jones fan and we draft a quarterback, don't hate that. Look at it in the big picture what this team is going to do. And I think, this is my cautionary tale. I say it every year on this show is look at the draft. Everybody we're getting is going to make this team better. Just because you were wrong doesn't mean that A, they were wrong, or B, the team won't be better because of it. So that's just my annual caveat to everybody, my annual, cautionary tale.
I like it. I think it's great advice.
Oh,
No, I think you're right. I think that we get very locked into our, especially because the draft season is very long. The off season is very long, but it is very much an active off season for the most active off season of any sport, I would think. Um,
absolutely.
so it's just a bunch of people talking about this shit for endless amounts of times. You get very locked into your thoughts and opinions, and you
And you're
forget
also
that there's
locked
a
in
game to play.
and you're also locked in before the draft because you, in your mind, I'm out on Daniel Jones.
Or I mean, yeah, you've just heard
I
it enough from Mel
I wanted
Kiper or whoever.
I wanted Saquon Barkley to stay, and that's gonna form an opinion of how you think the direction this team should go in going forward. So, again, because if they decide, or they decide to draft a quarterback, and you don't think they should, you're a Daniel Jones supporter. Don't look at it as this team failed you. Don't look at it as they made a mistake. We'll know if this team's made mistakes in 5 years from now, where the guy they drafted wasn't re-signed, flamed out, got hurt, and that was that. Not because a draft isn't, that's why we never give grades on this show. We don't grade that night. We wait till it plays out. We'll do a show probably this off season while we have time to kill. We'll probably review a draft from 5 years ago or 3 years ago and be like, now we can start assigning grades. But, hot takes of, oh, we get an F because we we drafted a wide receiver as opposed to a quarterback. That's silly, and it's just gonna make you miserable.
I actually like that. I think that we hit our. I have some off-season ideas. I actually think I want to do that. I want to do
Yeah.
some retrospective grades. Um, let's switch over to running back because this is an important conversation.
Hmm.
Before we get into like who's under contract right now, let's just go with the two contracts that have expired and the Giants chose not to retain. And the first is Saquon Barkley. Um, he leaves after being here since he was drafted in 2018, something
Hmm.
like that. 27 years old, and the other is Matt Breida, been here for 2 years, both years with Brian Dable. He's 29 years old. I had a lot of trouble like giving a value assessment to both of these running backs. So like Matt Breida to me, I want to say is a good for now kind of running back. Like the Giants re-signed him to be the guy that he was the last 2 years. I would say that that's still good for now. I would think based on the production, whatever. He's also 29. It just didn't feel like he moved like a 29-year-old. So like,
Hmm.
then I started to think about it as like, is that just a shit? Like that's just a waste of money. Like I think that would be like not a good for now move. And then Saquon Barkley, like my immediate thought is like, yeah, he's a build around guy. And then I thought like, oh man, he's like 27 years old already, and like is he even 20? Like he's not driving a 27-year-old's body.
Hmm.
Not really. um so like he's like a
I
build around for now, like a 2-year build around window. Like when does it close?
I
So
think
I want to know all of your thoughts on these two guys.
Saquon Barkley to me is a build around guy on a different team in a different circumstance.
Okay.
Saquon Barkley is an absolute build around guy. If I am a team, you know, that is needs an needs an extra gear at running back that has got, a fantastic passing game, has got a good offensive line. This team went 12-4 last year, has a pretty decent defense. They just need an extra weapon to hopefully put them over the edge. Then he's an absolute build around guy for me. For a team that is, beset with injuries, is still trying to really flip this roster over. That unfortunately last year, 2022 looks like it might have been the outlier in a long, slow grind. He's just not the right guy at the right time for this team. And to me, he's a move on from the Giants. And I think I was pretty vocal about this all throughout last year. We talked about, what should they do with Barkley? Should they re-sign him or what? Or tagging him? We talked about what his legacy is on this team, but to me, I'm kind of a new school guy that running backs for what their value is on these teams and where we are in our life cycle. It's just nice guy, was a good Giant, but you move on. You can't pay for a face of a franchise, even if I can question if he even is. You can't pay for past productivity. You have to pay for what's in the best interest of your team going forward. And I just don't see the value in paying what he wanted. I just didn't. I just never felt strongly about it. And I think the Giants did the right thing here. They're going to take a bit of a hit from the fans. That's fine. Let them scream all they want in the offseason. But when the season gets started, we're not going to be sitting around thinking, geez, it was 3rd and 2. If we had Saquon Barkley, he gets the first down. Or, if the offense is stagnant, we're not going to be like, if they had Barkley, things would be different. If this offense is stagnant this year and has problems, it's most likely because Daniel Jones is probably not healthy, or he's struggling behind an offensive line or doesn't have enough weapons to help him. So that none of that is, well, that's Barkley's fault. He's not here. So if that's not really the case, then to me, I feel justified in my move on and what they did.
I'm in total agreement as to well, I mean, there's just a lot of situational stuff that goes into the decision. And with Joe Shane and Brian Dable in the second year here, and after the year that they had, I honestly think that this year is the time for them to just nut up and hit the full reset button.
Let me,
And
I want
part
to
of
ask you a question
yeah,
about
okay,
that.
yeah,
And I'm throwing this at you. We didn't prep this. I'm just asking you this question.
hmm
Do you think everyone from the top down, after making the playoffs, really thought that they were ahead of schedule, or do you think that they knew there was still a grind with this roster rebuild?
I mean, no, I think that they knew that there was still a grind, but I think that their assessment of how they were able to win while building was where their miscalculation was. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like this, they they kind of like they did reach out to Saquon Barkley during that season for an
Mm-hmm.
extension,
Mm-hmm.
but they, and we can't really go off of what was reported to make any sort of assumption like this, but I really do think that it was like a 2-year extension with like a third-year option, essentially a 3-year extension with a 2-year out, which would be only it's just kicking the can, like it just felt like it was continuing to bridge the gap. Like I think they knew that they didn't really care about needing Saquon Barkley per se to run the team that they wanted to run. So like I don't think that there was like this belief that they were further along, but just simply that like, hey, we might be able to continue to build this team and just kind of like, we'll just franchise tag Barkley and just, we'll just push it out a year
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just continue to build the team and then we'll see where we're at and maybe we'll tag him again or, we'll sign him to something short term and we'll just keep building the team around it and, inch our way through the playoffs here and that sort of thing. I kind of think that's what it was. But nevertheless, I'm glad that the splash of cold water came quick and early, and it had the effect of like, I just don't think that they were willing to play too much ball with Barkley. Like they had their hard floor, and it was like, nah, I really don't care. You're either dealing with this, and this is what's on the table, or you can take a walk.
And I also think in retrospect, they made the right move tagging him and not tagging like Daniel Jones, for example. Like I still think they made the right move by signing Jones to the contract because of the contract they signed with him. Because yes, it's been the worst case scenario with Daniel Jones, but what if he wasn't not hurt? What if he actually was playing well? And then I think you have a bargain of a contract at the end of it. And I think it's you have to sometimes you have to take gambles. You have to take shots.
Right.
And,
yeah. So like,
and they protected themselves from making it an all out, super gamble, like all pot in. They didn't have to do that. But I think just strategically wise, I still think it was a smart move. Doing the tag and all that business with Barkley. I just because let's say Barkley, ran for 1,600 yards and was fantastic and everything. You don't have to break the bank to re-sign him. Where if let's say Daniel Jones, if you tagged him for 1 year and all of a sudden,
oh yeah,
has this amazing year, then all of a sudden you're talking from 40 million, you might have to pay, 50 million for him or something. And we have hindsight now, so don't laugh at me for saying that, but there's a potential that actually could have happened. And
no,
then
you're absolutely right. That was the defense of the contract at the time too. Is that in a couple of years, this is going to be a bargain contract.
mm-hmm.
Like
And
it just he wasn't even the highest paid for like a second.
right. And also when he was signed, Daniel Jones, he was still what, the 12th or 13th highest paid contract.
Right. Yeah.
So at the time, when we didn't, you can go back and whatever episode it was, we went through all 32 starting quarterbacks and said, where's Daniel Jones? And we ended up somewhere around 12 to 14. So it made sense. Now after the injury, after the bad year, it's like, oh, he's getting paid this. But guess what? Now all of a sudden, guys like Baker Mayfield are making more than him and stuff. So that ranking isn't even as high as it happens every year. People don't think about when you bitch and moan about a contract.
I think that yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, it was the right move. Their real misallocation was the real miscalculation was prioritizing getting Daniel Jones weapons over getting him protection, and just misunderstanding what Daniel Jones needed in order to have success. And I don't know where that blame lies. I don't know if that blame lies with the GM, with the coach, or if they have a shared philosophy that I just don't agree with. But it's easy to say like, oh, well, they had to rely on this running game and whatever. It's like they had to rely on this running game because they couldn't drop back and throw anything. I mean, like, the tale as old as time is that nobody can cover anybody in backyard football for 5 seconds. You will never be mistaken by getting yourself the best possible offensive line. It's never a bad decision.
Well, I'm going to throw a theory out there now. is now we're 3 general managers into. Well, we haven't built it out. We've had a shitty offensive line, and some of the common criticisms is, why are we building from the outside in? Maybe it's not the GM or the coach or personnel. Maybe it's from the top.
Nah, I'm done with this. No, I don't think that this ownership level is that. I've seen no. So I've already gotten into an argument over whether or not John Mara is a quote meddlesome owner like this week. So I have just extra special limited patience for this conversation. But like there has been no real evidence that John Mara is that level of meddlesome, that he is that involved in the draft process. I just don't see it. I do think that
I
he
didn't
probably
say I knew. I'm
no.
just saying,
I know.
it's at a certain point where, this is the third. Like I said again, the third general manager. Where like the philosophy they miscalculated because they're going, outside in, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Why is you don't think that this general manager is a dummy? For everybody, all the criticism that Dave Gettleman got from this fan base, it's not a dummy either. I just said, a potential thought is there something else that's like, I like shiny objects, and I like to I want to help my quarterback by giving him weapons as opposed to protecting. I don't know.
No, because I think
as
that
other famous conspiracy people say, just asking questions.
yeah. No, I mean, I think conscious efforts were made in recent years to fix it. The problem is that you have to finding talent is expensive, so you try to find it in the draft, right? And finding things in the draft is sort of a flip of a coin, even if it's the highest pick. But unlike other position groups, you don't dramatically alter your offense by nailing one of those. You know what I mean? And we've seen that firsthand. The Giants did nail the Andrew Thomas pick, but that doesn't mean shit because the other 4 have not been nailed down. It's not like nailing Calvin Johnson. You get Calvin Johnson, and that improves your wide receiver group by so much that it actually has a spread out kind of influence. Getting Andrew Thomas has a spread out influence, but it takes year after year of nailing it. That's hard.
But let's remember, though, after year 1, there was no consensus that we nailed the Andrew Thomas.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is that, like, the nailing it is something that comes with growth and time, and there's just... So, like, there was a conscious effort. I wouldn't say that this was a I don't even want to say meddlesome owner or anything like that. I think that it was just ignored for so long that all 5 pieces had to be replaced at the same time. And it's just not the situation so Kevin Zeitler was brought in. He ended up having to leave, but like all of the resources that Dave Gettleman threw at the offensive line, only some of them stuck. Shane Lemieux, Ben Bredesen was a Joe Judge one. I think that was under Gettleman. Yeah, it had to be.
He was the end of Gettleman. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben Bredesen, Billy Price was added super late. Nick Gates was added under the. They tried. They did gather as many things as they could, but they didn't hit on enough stuff, and they had too many things to fill, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also, right again, I still think even with a guy like Evan Neal, I mean, okay. We're starting to formulate an opinion over that he's a bust or he's never going to be successful. But again, he's been here 2 years.
But like 1.5, really.
Exactly. And anybody who has a formed opinion on JMS is crazy.
Right.
I mean, he's a rookie center, playing
on a bad team
with not a lot of help to either side of him. And, dealt with how many quarterbacks did he have to?
That too.
3?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot to throw at anybody. So, let's check back. Again, we said we want to look back at a draft in a couple of years, back and see how it is. Let's look at these guys in a couple of years. But I think it's still a little too early to tell.
Yeah, I agree. So getting us back towards Saquon Barkley, he's gone now. Before we get into how they've replaced it, what does that? Forget the replacement. Forget the running back room. What is the void left behind Saquon Barkley, in your opinion? Given the state of the team, given your opinion on him, how they should have paid it, whatever. Just give me your thoughts.
Well, I have a little bit of a different opinion, I think, than most people, is that it got to a point where I couldn't always rely on him always being there.
Right.
The injury issues were such a thing where I never felt like, he was like that bellwether guy where, you can pencil him in for 1,500 yards and you can pencil him in for, you know, 10 explosive plays and, you know, catching the ball out of the backfield. Like it was almost kind of like having him was almost like a luxury at certain points. Like, okay, he's missed these games. He's come back and he's not 100%. Okay, now he's finally healthy. Okay, great. But even of those games, it wasn't like I never felt like I had a Barry Sanders back there. Like any play is going to be a 70-yard touchdown. I
Right.
think I think he was, kind of frustrating. Just I think that the perception of Saquon Barkley will always be greater than the actual results, and some of that is not his fault, and some of it is just he is what he is. So when I talk about void, yeah, we're missing a number one running back, a guy who has breakout potential, who can bust a play for a huge gain or a long touchdown or something. But since I never felt this offense was Saquon centric and
Mm.
heliocentric around him, I don't think the effect of not having him is going to be as great as some people think it's going to be.
Well, I think I agree with almost all of that. I do think that there was something special being built between Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley in the way that Brian Dable was running the offense with the RPO offense in that first year in that 2022 season. And I know a lot has been made over like, oh, they kind of ran those plays to death. They can't rely on that anymore. They need a passing element, and this isn't going to work. That's fine. You're right. Okay. They can't rely on that to run the ball 32 times a game in an offense like that. But the speed of those two guys and the fakes in which Daniel Jones was running, they're very good fakes. And just the playmaking ability of Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones' unreal speed for
His size,
yeah, really.
and just to look at him too, he's
Just
deceivingly fast. But you just look at him.
exactly like the most deceivingly fast guy. That is not something that you would want to lose. Like if you add a passing element to that, only makes that running game part of it even better. If he had someone to reliably get open in that first year, if he had the protection to not have to always be doing, run fakes just to get an extra hundredth of a second to get a throw off,
Absolutely.
it was. I think that was a very deadly running attack. That like, it's the kind of thing where you might look at what San Francisco does and be like, well,
But
you don't have to build a whole offense. That's sort of like
here's a counter, though.
cool luxury. What's up?
The counter for that is that was 20. What year was 2021?
It was 2022.
2022. But we're also talking how many injuries for both of them. Like, can you replicate
No,
that
no, no.
now
I
with these
agree.
guys?
I'm just I do think that there was a point in their minds between the 22 and 23 season where they felt they could probably run a Saquon centric ish offense with that kind of running attack.
Mhm.
Right? Like I think the thought was that if they could supplement that rushing attack with an actual passing attack with people getting open and stretching the field downfield, that they had something to work with.
Sure.
Like I don't think there's any doubt that they wanted to keep those two people together, Saquon and Jones. They were trying to figure out how to keep both talents on the
Yes.
roster.
The problem is they're both going to be super expensive.
Right.
But and again, we're getting into if this team is on the verge, you go for it.
So
If you're not, yeah.
that brings us to the roster itself. They brought in Devin Singletary to fill that void. He's signed through 2026. There is a dead out after 2025. I have him as a good for now kind of guy. He's the same age as Saquon, just about 27 years old. But does he fill that void in that same way? Like, is there, in your opinion, now obviously is a silly time, but in April, do you think that they're going to try and build an offense that continues that sort of like RPO offense?
Uh, no, because I think they need to do whatever they can to keep Daniel Jones upright and healthy. And I think that knowing that they're going to want to have him, they're not going to have him running the ball as much or have the option to run as much. So I think that kind of throws that whole plan out the window.
Yeah, I agree. I think Devin Singletary is just this is going to be a little bit more of what we saw in Buffalo, is just like a zone
Yeah,
a
I
zone
think
running offense.
I think if this is Daniel Jones from 2022, and we're not so concerned about him being fragile or being hurt all the time or something, yeah, maybe. But I think in the present situation, again, we don't want to. Nobody wants to go through that again, where you have to go to the backup quarterback and then potentially
Oh God, no.
to Tommy DeVito. I mean, nice story, but nobody wants to go through that again. And the fastest way to get to Tommy DeVito is if your starting quarterback is hurt again, and then you're just you're a heartbeat away.
Yeah. Um, Last year the Giants also drafted Eric Gray. Um, he's signed through 2026. I know that I was particularly hard on Eric Gray, but that had nothing to do with his ability as a running back. Simply him being shoehorned into a position he doesn't play. In the limited time that he had some running back experience, he didn't look bad last year, actually. I thought that he actually looked like he might show something, some level of growth to be, I wouldn't say excited about, but hopeful for, as being like a 1-2 punch kind of guy. I
Put him in
guess,
the oven and you let him cook.
yeah,
And see.
yeah. um, I guess he's kind of like a good for now guy, given the state of how much playing time he got and just being drafted last year. I get.
He's a good for now guy because I don't expect a massive overhaul of the running back room between now and the start of the season. I mean, I don't really think we're going to be drafting a quarterback super high who's going to be running back one, and it's going to all of a sudden push everybody down a spot, and all of a sudden Eric Gray's the odd man out. I don't see that. So we'll worry about the back end later of the running back room. I think for now, give another year to percolate and see what he can do.
The Giants did something really interesting.
They did.
They signed a guy named Dante Miller at the beginning of the month. We did not really cover it. We didn't cover it at all. Dante Miller is an interesting story, and I don't really have all the details, but essentially this is a student from the University of Columbia,
Columbia.
played in the Ivy League.
Columbia unit. Wait. Where did he go? He went to Columbia, right?
Columbia University.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's in Ivy League, which meant that he didn't play in 2020 for the COVID year. Thought that he had some extra eligibility, played at South Carolina last year. I think both he and the University of South Carolina thought that they were getting 2 years of eligibility out of him, and then like after the fact they found out there was something was screwy with his transfer and his eligibility, and he had no more eligibility, and that was it. So he just kind of became this like nebulous part of the process. He didn't go to the combine, or I don't think he really got any part of that. So he was just kind of sitting out there, and the Giants signed him to a 3-year, $3 million contract. A lot of that is kind of backloaded to that final year of being like 1.1 million or something like that, and then the other 1.9 is spread out over the first 2 years. But
Right.
they essentially got themselves a draft pick without having to spend a draft pick. And this is really interesting because it's hard for me to grade somebody like Dante Miller, who got limited playing time at South Carolina because they thought they were going to get another year out of him. And then a guy who ran a 4.27 40 and, is 5'9", 200 pounds, just dominating the Ivy League. Like, just 1,200 yards from scrimmage. Like, I don't really know what to expect from this guy, but the Giants didn't think that he was worth a cheap contract.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember him in South Carolina, so that he wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this kid. He has such limited stats at South Carolina too. Like, they really didn't even use him.
Mm-hmm.
this is really interesting because, I could go through a list of a lot of really good draft pick running backs here. Trey Benson, I know you can cover your ears if you want to, I think is almost worthy of a day one pick.
I think he had like 12 touchdowns against us in that game in
Yeah,
November. Yeah.
he's incredible. He's a very good running back. But I mean, Blake Corum, I could have talked to you about for two full episodes worth last year, before
Mhm.
this year even. There's other really talented guys that I even got to see down at the Senior Bowl that are like day 3 guys, like Dylan Lauby from New Hampshire looks like a third down running back. What all these things I would say normally, I was prepared to say, the Giants need to fix the offense first. And, I'm not saying they need to replace Saquon Barkley, but they have to have a future in mind. You can get a lot of value out of a 7th round running back and all this stuff, and that they should seriously consider a day 3 pick and all this nonsense. I think they got a freebie here with Dante
Yeah,
Miller. I don't think
sure.
that they need to do any of that shit at all. I think they can focus on shoring up the offensive line and getting wide receivers and tight ends, and not worry about the running back position in this draft.
I agree. I think let's see what we have. I think going back to Eric Gray, I think giving him another full year of going through, off-season OTA and everything, and conditioning program and stuff, and being more confident, during training camp, I think you might see some different results from him. And
Well, just him playing running back instead of punt returner.
exactly, yeah. I'm not ready to, throw that baby out with the bathwater at all. I think a lot of people were ready to do so, and you know,
Well, no, I think that's what I'm saying is that, like, if it were just Devin Singletary and Eric Gray, I would say you have an aging good for now that you spent
hmm
money on, and you have a big question mark draft pick, green rookie. I
right.
maybe you do need to address this position in the draft, or with more free agency or something like that. But with the addition of Dante Miller, and I'm not trying to inflate him to be something way beyond. Like I said, I don't really know how to grade somebody like this,
hmm
but the Giants certainly think something of him. And once you add him into the mix, it's like, you have your good for now for this season. Eric Gray, you took a swing on already. You clearly have thoughts about him. And then you have an even younger guy. I don't know. I think this room is complete for 2024.
Yeah, I think the room again, like we talked about with linebackers, I think this room is a good for now. It's again we lump these two together because we consider them low priority in the grand scheme of what needs to be fixed. And I think this room can hold its own for right now. I mean, now again, I also think that if this running back room struggles, it's going to be more of a product around them. They don't have an offensive line, to protect, for them to fit holes. There's no noticeable passing game potentially. So it's hard to make a real assessment of those, things with all these other things going on. So for right now, let's just see what we have to work with. And as the offensive line gets better, we get weapons on the outside. Quarterback is figured out what we're going to do. Then we can kind of dig and say, okay, let's try to get your real RB1, and go forward from there. But I don't think we have bigger fish to fry again. I know you're using that term way too much, but it's true.
Well, you can tell that you're close to tapping out. But I'll leave you with this in general. This will be kind of my last thought on this episode here.
Yeah.
But historically, if you look at what they've done in Buffalo, I don't think that they prioritize this position group and clearly getting the right personnel in, but they don't value it the same way Dave Gettleman valued it. And I
Yeah.
don't mean like
Obviously. Yeah.
just to the point where I don't think that there is a specimen out there that they feel is so good at running back that he is worth taking that high. I
hmm
just don't think that they have that in them the same way that Dave Gettleman was willing to say, this is a good football player. I don't care what position he plays,
I think
kind of
there's a
thing.
type that they want, but I don't think there's a
Right.
person like that's the guy.
I really think that the second round is the highest they'll ever go on a running back, and it'll be because it's the guy they loved fell to them and they need it or whatever, or it's just the last thing left that they need to complete the offense.
Well,
It's the only way I could see them do that.
quite frankly, does anybody really think that running back's a first round pick anymore? Is anybody out there that's first round pick
You know,
material?
I think once you're picking past 20, you're picking good football players anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I think you
Hmm.
can make a solid argument that, if you're picking at 22, picking a running back is not that. One of these kinds of guys, like a Trey Benson at 22, I don't think is insane. I know
Yeah.
I'm pissing off so many people right now by saying that, but, it's amazing what the hit rate is like as you go down further and further into the draft. So that's all
Hmm.
I'm going to
Hmm.
say.
Yep.
So that's going to wrap this episode, but we are going to be back one more time on draft day, Thursday morning. There will be our final thoughts heading into the draft. I have no idea what that's going to look and sound like, but be ready for that on
And
iTunes
draft
Sound.
night, you have an appointment.
That's right. So that episode will be on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, everywhere, YouTube. And then that night, and then Friday night, and for most of Saturday, I will be at the John Boy offices with Bobby Skinner, Justin Pennick, and whomever else is going to be there. I actually don't know. On their Talking Giants channel, on their JM football channel, live streaming the draft. It's going to be a ton of fun. This will be, my third time, I think, doing this?
Third annual, I believe.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
And I Thursday night is the draft. It's game 3 of the Knicks, and I believe it's game 3 of the Lightning. So I am looking to go somewhere where I can get 3 big TVs in front of me. So if anybody is in the New York area and wants to meet up with me and watch everything and watch my head just finally explode into a million little pieces, hit me up on Twitter or wherever, and make a recommendation if you want to meet up. I'm up for watching everything. It's a huge night. Obviously, the present with the playoffs and the future with the draft. And yeah, I will be. And I might even make a surprise call into your webcast too to
How about that?
say my thoughts.
And then we'll also be back next week recapping kind of the draft. We'll be back at our normal time on Tuesday morning with
Yeah,
our
special one, big one.
yep. I don't know how in depth I'll be by that point, if I'll have gone through everyone with the fine tooth comb that I want to, or if I'll just continue doing stuff. But our initial reactions to
Oh
everything.
yeah, yeah. Well, that'll be our initial debriefing, my initial thoughts. You know,
And then
that- uh,
shortly after that is mandatory minicamp.
you know, and away we go. I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna get into May, and before you know it, it's gonna be July, and we'll be like, damn, we're gonna be
Yep.
going out to the
Training
Meadowlands
camp.
for
Yeah.
yeah.
To sweat.
It's as cold as shit here in the New York area. Walking around in a heavy jacket. I'm wearing a ski cap here, for Christ's
I
sakes.
did too. Yeah, today on my way to work.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you guys later this week. Have a happy draft week. Until then, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.